Today we are going to talk about all things spears in NARAKA. In the most recent beta, the only weapon I have pretty much played is the spear. To be honest, I didn't play much of the Battle Royale mode, but instead I camped in custom looking for 101s. Personally, I just enjoy the fights and learning about the fights. In the first few games, I've already gotten lucky enough to find some pretty good spear players. Not only do I get to see how people are using the spear, but I also get to feel how it's like being at the receiving end against a spear user. Eventually I started to get the hang of things, but considering how short the beta is, if I missed or got anything wrong, please let me know down in the comments so that we could all learn from each other. I've made a video on how each weapon is unique in the past back when there were only 3 weapons, like how parts of the longsword's focus will not disarm and drop if the weapon is countered, or the greatsword's turtling potential. There are minor tweaks here and there, but the general idea or concept still seems the same. The spear also has its uniqueness, other than how it looks and its combo animation of course. It is actually very hard to miss because unlike the blue or red glows we are familiar with that is associated with focus strike and counter strikes, you may have noticed spear users had a yellow or golden glow instead. From my understanding, it cannot be stopped, not with focus or counter strikes. It is possible that it cannot be stopped with a counter strike because you just simply couldn't pull off a counter when it's comboing you. There are conditions for this golden series of attacks to be triggered. The easiest way is through timing the release of your focus strikes. It has to be released almost exactly on the second charge. Instead of the usual focus attack, if you got the timing right, it will do a thrust that moves you forward. Ideally, you want to head towards the enemy. If this thrust hits an enemy, a left click or a right click depending on what you start your combo with will trigger this golden spin. Spamming left click or again right click depending on if you're on your left click combo or the right click combo can make this golden attack last longer. Another way to trigger this attack is from a successful counter. Left clicking after will allow you to make the thrust that leads to a golden attack. For a successful counter, a right click does not seem to work. Players hit by this attack are staggered, which means they will not be able to attack, dodge out, or even use most abilities. But because of the tight timing of this trigger, it's easy to stop it before it starts. One of the harder parts when countering focuses is figuring out when the release will happen. It's actually not just as easy as seeing the blue glow and do a counter. It is also about predicting when the release will happen. I say predict because by the time you see a focus release, it's usually too late, unless it is a longsword. With a little bit of distance and practice, you can actually counter each focus from the longsword without fail. So because there's a big incentive to be using the golden attack, there is a more likely chance that the focus will be released at the start of the second charge, making it slightly more predictable. I do feel like because the spear is very new and we just don't know enough on how to handle a spear user, it could feel really strong at the moment, but as always, only time will tell. Among all the different weapons I've encountered with the spear, I find the greatsword to be the hardest to deal with. Even though I heard that there were actually a lot of changes to how the greatsword performed since the previous beta, like delays were added or something, which I believe was meant to make it weaker. On the other hand, the one that I felt easiest to deal with is actually the longsword. Maybe by instinct, most longsword users would keep their distance. That made it easier to pull off a counter strike as mentioned earlier, and that allows me to close the gap with a thrust followed by a golden series of attack because again one of the triggers is from a counter strike. Something I also tested was the range of each weapon. Did you know that for most weapons, the initial left click horizontal attack is actually shorter than a right click vertical attack? And among the horizontal attacks, the spear has the furthest reach because on the first click it does 2 hits and both hits actually moves the character forward a little. This is important because the moment these initial common attacks hit, a short combo can be linked before the enemy could safely dodge out. So getting that first hit in when the enemy is off guard simply because of your range allows for at least 2 clicks worth of damage, if not more in most cases. One of my favorite parts of the spear's built-in combo, besides the golden attack, is probably the part at the end of the left click combo that does a horizontal spin. Not only does it cover a decent range around you, it is also just very satisfying and it knocks enemies down. But despite how it seems, it could still be dodged away from before it hits you. So let me know what you think of the spear and if I've left any important details about this weapon down at the comments. By the time this video is out, the beta is probably over, but hopefully this video will help prepare you for the coming release. With that said, happy gaming and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.
Your penance. I saw no lies, only the painful truth. I sell no lies, only the painful truth.